Good morning. So when the kingdom comes, what sort of people will be with Jesus as kings and priests ruling this earth? Well, we can look at one that we know for certain is going to be with Jesus, and that's the Apostle Peter. And we might look at some of the things he went through and how he cares for us and the flock that he had under his care. We start in Acts 12. Now the context here is that Herod had started a really bad wave of persecution. He had executed James, the brother of John. That's not the James who wrote the book of James, because he was the half-brother of Jesus. But this was James, the Apostle James. Peter knew this, but Peter too had been arrested, so he must have thought he was going to die. Not only that, but this was the anniversary of Jesus' death, around about the time of Passover. So Peter's in prison, and on the night before Herod was about to try him, Acts 12 verse 6, Peter was sleeping between two soldiers. He was fastened with double chains, and there were guards outside keeping watch. A bit of an overkill, really, but Peter was not going to escape. However, in the middle of the night, a bright light fills the cell, and the angel who's come pokes Peter in the side and says, "Wake up, wake up." The chains fall off Peter. He's told to put on his belt and his sandals and his cloak, because it's the end of March, beginning April, probably a bit chilly in the middle of the night. So the angel says to him, "Hurry now." So they go past two guard posts and they come to the front door, which of course is locked, but it opens of its own accord. Peter steps out into the road and the angel leaves him. Now Peter all this time had been thinking he was either dreaming or it was a vision, but he comes to himself, realizes he'd been set free. But what is he to do? He decides to go to the home of Mary, that's the mother of Mark. And here he believes there would be several Christians gathered, and he knocks on the outer door. Now this was locked because they were afraid of the persecution. But the servant girl, Rhoda, goes to answer the door, and she asks, "Who is it?" And hearing Peter's voice, instead of opening the door, she's so full of joy, she rushes back to the others and says, it's Peter, he's alive." And they all say, "Oh, don't be silly, girl." Anyway, they go to the door and Peter's still knocking, and they open it, and of course it's Peter. Everybody starts talking at once, but Peter asks for quiet and he tells them the story. And of course Peter then is safe to carry on his ministry, but quite a traumatizing experience. Herod, by the way, was eaten up by worms and died. So a fitting end to quite a nasty man. So what did Peter do about his experiences? Well, he wrote a couple of letters to help us. And in 1 Peter 4, he's talking. He says, "Think of what the Christ suffered in this life, and then arm yourself with the same resolution that he had." So Peter's asking us to endure, to put up with suffering, as Jesus did, to go through it, because it will end. And then in verse 13, he says, "If you can have some share in the sufferings of Christ, be glad, because you will enjoy a much greater gladness when his glory is revealed." Peter had great care for his flock. Now the second letter of Peter contains quite an urgent message, the reason being that in 2 Peter 1 and verse 14, he says, "I know the time for my taking off of this tent is near." In other words, this time Peter knew he really was going to die, and he wanted to leave us something that we could recall to our minds, to remember what Peter had said, so that we could stand fast in the way of Christianity. Now, the rest of the book goes on to talk about being careful not to be misled by false teachers, that the new heavens and the new earth are coming, and in these righteousness was to dwell. And then he, in chapter 1, verses 16 to 18, he gives us an assurance that these things will come true. And he recounts the time when he was in the mountain with James and John, and they saw Jesus transfigured into the glory he'll have in his kingdom. So we can be absolutely certain that our salvation is coming. So, as Peter goes on to say in verse 19, we are right to depend on prophecy. We can take it as a lamp for lighting a way through the dark until the dawn comes and the morning star rises in your hearts. Lovely thought. So I'll leave you with that. If you can read through those two letters, you'll be greatly encouraged, and you'll see how caring Peter was and what a good king he will make when the kingdom comes. But thank you so much for watching, and God bless.